vaccinated.
Okay.
My mom taught me to sell at a spaza shop. She ran a hair salon. I pretty much learned entrepreneurship from my moms.
Umntu ngumntu ngabantu. That on your own, you can't really do it. You need the support of those around you.
You will have a network of people, a network of communities, and a society that will make sure that you count.
Hello, it's time for SAITA StraightTalk, our series of panel discussions that's brought to you with the compliments of the South African Informal Traders Alliance, SAITA. In our SAITA panel discussions, Straight Talk, we endeavor to touch on all the issues that are pertinent to the informal sector. And sometimes it's economic discussions and other times it's social discussions. Tonight, it's a bit of both and a little bit of health included. My name is Louise, and I'm very, very glad that you've taken the time to join us in this discussion. I want to welcome to the Straight Talk studio this evening, Craig. Craig, good evening. Welcome, and tell us a little bit more about yourself, please.
Good evening, Louise. My name is Craig. I work for an NGO called Right to Care. I started as a counselor. I was trained by them as a counselor. I've done work for them. Probably the work that I'm the most proud of is working inside the Department of Correctional Services, educating on HIV and TB. I work in Centurion at the moment in the head office now, and sadly the work in the DCS has come to an end, but it still has many, many fond memories for me.
Craig, thank you again. I'm so looking forward to this discussion because there's so many things that I want to probe. But just to set the scene quickly, I found some stats from that was released in 2020. That's last year, and it looks at the numbers from 2018 and 2019. So in South Africa, last year we had 7.5 million people living with HIV. 19% of those with HIV prevalence were between the ages of 15 and 49. We're looking at about 240,000 new infections last year, 72,000 AIDS-related deaths. And then of all the people that are HIV positive, those are adults and children living with HIV, only 71% of those adults are on antiretroviral treatment, and 47% of those children are also on antiretroviral treatment. But the stats that really got me going is that South Africa has the biggest HIV epidemic in the world, with 7.7 million people living with HIV. I mean, that is a staggering amount. And that the HIV prevalence amongst the general population is at 20.4%, with women, the prevalence being so much higher than with men. But in saying that we have the biggest HIV epidemic in the world, our country also has the world's largest antiretroviral treatment program. And it's undergone further expansion with the implementation of the test and treat guidelines. So it's staggering, yes, but it also seems that there has been a lot of work done. I mean, I know that HIV over the last 2 years since COVID-19 made its appearance has sort of, as with all other illnesses, has sort of dwindled into the background. But with yesterday being the 1st of December, and it being the day that we've set aside to really talk about the importance of HIV and AIDS. And we weren't live yesterday. So today is a time to reflect. I want to start off by asking you, Craig, personally, you have had a journey with HIV.
Absolutely. I am HIV positive. I tested HIV positive. I think it was 21 years ago.
How did that happen? What
I,
made you
it's
test?
very interesting because I wasn't testing because I felt ill. I wasn't testing because I was suspicious that I might be positive. I just thought, let me just do it. I haven't done it for a while. And so I went to a clinic in Zwelihle in Hermanus, government clinic, and run by a friend of mine. And she tested me, and I was watching her face, and suddenly her face changed. And I
Yeah.
thought, uh-oh. And she said, I need to do another test. And that is clinic speak for your first test has come back positive.
And then
And
what happened?
the second test was positive, and she showed me both tests. And you kind of go numb. You go into limbo. It's like somebody saying to you, you've got cancer, you're going to die next week. And that's how you feel. Because remember, I tested in the time of the great HIV denialists, Thabo Mbeki and Mantu Shabalala Masimang. And so
The olive
it
oil and
wasn't,
lemon, the olive
yes,
oil and
the olive oil,
lemon
beetroot,
generation.
garlic, lemon juice, all those things. So
Yeah.
and also you were not part of test and treat. You had to be in a scenario where your CD4 count fell to below 200.
So Craig,
And
what is
your
the
HIV,
CD4? What is CD4 count?
your CD4 count is your white blood cells. So it's the part that protects you.
Yeah.
Remember, HIV attacks if you have a high HIV and a low CD4, you're in trouble. High viral load, low CD4. What you want is a high CD4 and a low viral load.
Okay.
And I'm going to come back to that in a minute. So when you are losing weight, when you are susceptible to any kind of virus, flu all the time, coughing, sick, you're very susceptible to TB, you lose an incredible amount of weight.
Yeah.
I'm tall. I'm 6'4".
Wow.
I went down to 69 kilos.
Sure. Yeah.
So I looked like literally a walking skeleton.
Yeah.
When they started me on antiretrovirals, they made me very ill. And you almost wish that you don't even want to take them because they make you feel worse. The counselors have to make you understand that you have to persist and you have to take them. And in those days, there were 3 tablets a day. Today, it's 1 tablet. You pop 1 tablet and it's done. Much easier to take. And you reach a stage where I am now and where I have been for many years called undetectable.
Okay. So
Now,
is that almost like cancer being in remission?
well, it's better than that because if I had an HIV test today, the test would show negative.
Okay.
Now, that is a problem in itself because if somebody who is not properly counseled and they know that they're HIV positive, and a lot of HIV positive patients want to go and check again because they're never sure that the first diagnosis was accurate. And a counselor, when they test you, should always say to you, have you ever tested for HIV? Yes or no? And if yes, what was the result?
Mm.
Because what happens, or what can happen, is that somebody goes and is told by a counselor, your test is negative. And they think that their test is really negative. Meanwhile, it's not. It's just undetectable. So they stop treatment because they think they're cured.
So Craig, are you saying to me that 21 years later, you are
Yes,
still taking your treatment?
absolutely. I take it every day, and I will take it until I die.
Okay.
It's a lifelong commitment.
Uh-huh.
It's not something that you can stop and start. It's not something. It's something that you have to embrace 100%. The stigma that goes with HIV, and we will talk about stigma, I'm sure, later on. But the only way we can tackle stigma about anything, the stigma of being gay, the stigma of being trans, the stigma of being an amputee, the stigma of being black or colored or straight or gay or positive or negative. We've got to have those discussions. That's
Yeah,
why I love this kind of discussion, because it's straight talking.
exactly that. But now, so you've gone on to the treatment. You found out by chance, really, or
Yes.
maybe it is. How did that affect your relationships? Were you in a relationship when you found
Well,
out?
it's very interesting. No, I wasn't, but um, it's another facet to HIV. When I always talk to people, when I counsel them, and I say, let's talk about disclosure.
Mm.
I always remember a joke where somebody said to a black American who was gay, and they said to him, tell me, is it easier to be black or easier to be gay? And he said, no, it's much easier to be black because you don't have to tell your mother.
Yeah.
So this is a discussion that you have to have with yourself.
Mm.
You cannot pretend when you look in the mirror and look into your own eyes that you are not positive.
And how
You have
how do you
to.
deal with that emotionally? How do you get through it?
It's very difficult, Louise. I'm not going to say to you it's a walk in the park. It's not. It's not. But like all things, unless you deal with them, they'll eat you from the inside.
Yeah.
So you either have to go for counseling, or you have to join a support group, or you
Mm.
have to find someone that you can really talk to that you trust.
So
And
what
while
did you do?
I joined a support group, but I also want to also say this very clearly, because this did happen to me and it was very unpleasant. Be very careful who you disclose to, because the person that you think is your best friend
Yeah.
may not be that accepting.
Mm.
The person that you disclose to may run around and tell the entire community, which is illegal, by the way.
Yeah.
When somebody discloses to you, under no circumstances may you disclose.
Mm.
And I always think, in my travels that I did in the Karoo, I was in a small town in the Karoo. I'm not going to tell you the name because it will open up a can of worms. But a sister came to me and she said, I need to talk to you. I said, talk. She said, I tested at the high school
Yeah.
last week. I said, yeah. She said, and I tested the captain of the school rugby team HIV positive,
Yeah.
18 years of age.
Yeah.
And she said, on Friday night when I got home, my daughter, who is 17, came running to the door. Mommy, 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 guess what? I've got a date tonight with the hottest guy in the school. And at 7:15, when she opened the door, there stood the captain of the rugby team, taking her daughter on a date.
Well, I mean, technically there should be nothing wrong with going on a date, unless, of course, there's unprotected sex, isn't it?
As a mother, that lady nearly had a nervous breakdown. So I said to her, "What did you do?" She said, "It was with great difficulty that I did nothing except say, 'Have a nice evening.'"
Wow.
I said to her, "I'm very proud of you."
Yeah.
And here's my discussion now. You need to have that conversation with your children long before there's going to be a school date.
Yeah.
With the hottest guy in the school or the hottest girl in the school. You need to have that conversation long before, because you can't have it at the door, and you can't slam the door in his face, and you can't push a packet of condoms in his hand.
Yeah. But that goes back to something that you touched on earlier, and that is about the whole stigma thing, isn't it?
Well, it's a combination of things. It's a combination of sex education. It's a combination of stigma. It's a combination of fear. It's a combination of parents thinking that the younger generation don't know how to take care of themselves, which I dispute, because let's face it, the majority of the younger generation today has access to the internet.
But you know, Craig, when I was reading and preparing for the show, one of the stats that jumped out at me was not only the fact that HIV was more prevalent among women than in men.
Yes.
But it was also what struck me was the amount of younger women.
Yes.
And the research said that they attribute it to the amount of relationships that younger women have with older men.
Well, you see, now you're opening it, because there's the whole sugar daddy syndrome and the blesser syndrome.
Yeah.
And so let's unpack this. Women will be more susceptible because of their physiological makeup. In other words, men who are positive are depositing a load of infected seminal fluid into the vagina.
Yeah.
Sex, whether it is gentle or rough, penetrative sex causes abrasions on the vaginal or anal walls, which is an entry point for HIV.
Yeah.
What I find very scary, and you haven't touched on it yet, is you've touched on the fact that there are more women who are positive, but there are more men who die of HIV.
And why do you think that is?
Because they don't take treatment.
So are you saying to me that 70% that I read off earlier of HIV, people living with HIV, that 70% of people that are on treatment are predominantly women?
Absolutely. And why will men not access treatment? It comes back to stigma. It comes back to men don't like to go to clinics. Why? Because clinics are full of women and full of babies and full of female nurses. So it's not a very welcoming place for a man who's HIV positive.
Yeah. So I want to... Yeah, sorry, carry on.
No, carry on. You want to?
So I wanted to ask you, so your involvement with Right to Care, were you part of the organization before you found out your status?
No.
Was this a progression?
I joined Right to Care. I've had a checkered career. I started life breeding racehorses, and then I had my own restaurant for 16 years, and then I joined Right to Care. I'm not a very young person.
Never say that.
I'm
So,
turning 60. I'm turning 64 tomorrow.
wow. Oh, okay, that's amazing. You
Yeah,
don't look 64.
thank you.
Craig,
Yeah.
tell us about Right to Care and that
Right
journey.
to Care, Right to Care is one of the most wonderful NGOs in South Africa. It's probably the biggest. It accesses funding from around the world, and it also gets funding from the Department of Health. It works with other NGOs. It works with all the testing laboratories within South Africa. It works internationally. It does a lot of work with HIV, with TB. It does a lot of work with COVID. We're trying to run vaccination programs right around the country, Namibia, Malawi, Swaziland, Lesotho. We are educating, and we don't stop. We're 3.5, maybe 4,000 members strong. And we have a very well run, dedicated, professional approach to all matters health wise, whether it's medical male circumcision, whether it's HIV, whether it's TB, whether it's COVID, whether it's gender based violence, whether it's, I think I mentioned medical male circumcision already.
Yeah, you did.
So it's a well-rounded, very big, very powerful organization, but it's never lost its grassroots approach to Africa, South Africa, and the international countries that we work in.
So I want to go to lifestyle. We've spoken about the stigma.
Yeah.
We know that a lot of us don't have the lifestyle that protects us from potentially contracting HIV.
Yeah.
How do you go about educating? I want you to take us through the steps,
Okay.
because whoever's
I-
watching might be somebody that's sitting with those questions.
My first point of reference always is, and I don't do the abstain, and I don't do the people have sex. Let's face it.
Yeah.
We like sex, we enjoy it, and my catchphrase inside the DCS program was one partner, one condom, one round. You're going to have more than one round with more than one partner, change the condom. That's my first point of call. Secondly, if you're on treatment and you've reached the wonderful undetectable, you then become what we call U, capital U, equals U, which is undetectable equals untransmissible. Now that's very powerful if you unpack that, because what it means is that if I, as an undetectable HIV positive person, have unprotected sex, in other words, without a condom, the chances are very slim that I will give my partner HIV.
Okay.
Because I don't have enough of the virus in my system to be able to transmit the virus.
But the proviso there would be that I continue my regimen of medication.
Well, you see, this is where antiretrovirals are so marvelous, because we have two other guns in the safe, as it were. One is called PEP, which is PEP, which is post-exposure prophylaxis, which sounds very complicated. All it means is if you've been exposed to HIV,
Yeah.
in other words, you've had unprotected sex at a party or wherever it was, and you heard that your partner that you had sex with is positive, you can go to any clinic within 72 hours of exposure and you get antiretrovirals and you take them for 28 days.
Yeah.
It will stop the HIV entering your system.
Wow.
Now, the proviso is that you have to be HIV negative. The proviso is that you have to get those tablets within the 72 hours. Preferably, I prefer between 24 and 48 hours. The other one is pre-exposure prophylaxis. In other words, you are somebody who has many drinks, many parties, many partners, and sometimes, or more often than not, you forget to have a condom, but you like to have plenty of sex and what. You can put yourself onto a course of antiretrovirals called pre-exposure. In other words, before you get HIV, you start taking antiretrovirals. That will stop you getting HIV.
But is that something that I can go to a clinic and ask for before the time?
Absolutely. But the proviso is that you have to have an HIV negative test at the clinic.
Yeah.
Okay. And you then start your antiretrovirals. Now, there's a discrepancy here. The women always get the short shift. They take longer to become protected than men. Okay, so before you start engaging in unprotected sex, don't think you can go to the clinic in the morning and have unprotected sex tonight. You're not protected. It takes a while for the antibodies to build up in your system to be able to protect you. So when you talked earlier on about the great strides that have been made medically,
Yeah.
they're huge. You only have to think back. I mean, we've had HIV in the world for 38 years. It's a very different scenario today versus what it was 30 years ago. 30 years ago, it really was a death sentence.
But Craig, although we've made those big strides medically,
Yes.
has our society moved accordingly?
No. Because
So what do we need to do to shake things up?
educate. Number one. Number two, destigmatize HIV. Have the conversation. Have the conversation around the dinner table. Have the conversation with your children. Have the conversation with your parents. Have the conversation with anybody who will listen. And stop anybody in their tracks who is anti-treatment, who is anti-education, who is anti-embracing the way forward, because the only way that we are going to stop HIV is to stop transmission.
Yeah.
There's no other way. And I used to say in the prison, I used to say HIV is like 100 rand. And the guys used to look at me and go, huh? And I'd say, yeah. I said, if someone says to you, it's 100 rand, you go, no. Meanwhile, you've got the 100 rand in your back pocket. So if somebody says to you, are you positive? You go, no. Meanwhile, you know damn well you are, but you're not on treatment. And here's the very scary part. HIV, like COVID, like TB, like any damn virus, is not interested whether you're straight or gay or bi or trans or black or white or rich or poor. They only want an entry point. That's all they want. It's a virus and it wants a place to get inside. So if we want to stop HIV, that's what we have to stop. And the only way to stop that is to continually have the conversation. And I'm sure that most of our schools, most of our churches, most of our communities will only pay lip service to HIV around the 1st of December every year.
Unfortunately, I have to agree with you.
And for the other 364 days of the year, they forget about it.
Yeah.
And that is why I don't like the 1st of December, because I always say to the people that I talk to, and I've given many talks, what about the other 364 days? This is a conversation we need to have every day. This is not a conversation we should not be having. We should be having it. We should be having it in our schools. We should be having it in our communities. You should be having it in your sessions that you have with your informal traders, let's put it another way. How easy is it for informal traders to access an HIV test? How easy is it for informal traders to access condoms? How easy is it for informal traders to access treatment?
Yeah.
And we've had a problem now because we've had lockdown. So there's been a dip in people accessing antiretrovirals.
Yeah.
And with lockdown, Louise, there's another scary statistic, is that they released the other day that there are 900 teenage pregnancies between the age of 9 and 11. Excuse me, those are children.
Those are babies, yes.
And how dare you? How bloody dare you? And I love what I do. I love being able to talk. I love being able to impart my journey. I love being able to talk about HIV. I love being able to, I would go back to work in a prison tomorrow if I could, because of the hunger for the information within DCS across the board, whether it was in one of the worst and high secure prisons to the easiest ones. There was a real hunger for knowledge. And we don't think gender-based violence inside DCS, but it's there. We don't think of that, but it's there.
You know, that's exactly the point I wanted to make now, that there are so many social issues that actually only
Yes,
gets the highlight when it's the day that has been assigned to it. So
yes,
you've mentioned the 1st of December, but I mean the 16 days of activism against
exactly.
women, of violence against women and children, exactly the same thing. And I mean
Yes,
it's gone so bad now that even within the 16 days, where you'd think that people would be
oh
super
no,
alert, we see
no,
the most
no.
violent occurrences.
And you know what terrifies me is a woman or a person, because its gender is across, violence is across all genders, but someone who is vulnerable, whether it's economically or emotionally or psychologically, if that person is forced into a sexual relationship and the perpetrator refuses to wear a condom, then what? It opens a whole can of worms.
Yeah.
Never
Yeah.
mind the unwanted pregnancy, never mind the STIs. What about HIV?
What
What
about
about
HIV?
access to treatment?
But I want to take you back to a question that you've just asked.
Yes,
And that was with regards to the informal traders.
yes,
Where do we go? Where do we go? Because we cannot say in South Africa that our informal traders are concentrated in one area. So,
no,
let's just make sure we've got informal traders from our metros right through to the very most rural areas of
yes,
this country.
yes.
So, in order to get tested, in order to get treatment, is that solely the Department of Health's responsibility? Or how can we as a
Well,
community
as a
start lobbying?
it's always been a source of, dare I say, pride that
Yeah.
I was tested positive in a government clinic.
Mm.
It wasn't a fancy discovery run. Not that I have anything against that, but it was a Department of Health clinic in Zwelihle in Hermanus.
Mm.
And I'm proud of that because I want to say unequivocally that departments of health, government departments of health, because they have a much higher exposure to HIV and TB and STIs per patient capita, their experience in dealing with and counseling patients is better
Yeah.
than somebody who goes to a clinic in Santon and is the only HIV positive person for the whole month.
Yeah. I get
So,
you.
your informal trader that you are worried about, you need not worry. Your informal trader needs to do only one thing: access the treatment, access the test, access the condom.
Mm.
And whatever the result, the only person who's responsible for looking after you is you,
Mm.
not the government. The government doesn't put the condom on. The government doesn't put the pill down your throat. They'll give it to you, but you have to do the rest. And that's what we need to understand, is that if you don't access the treatment, who are you going to blame? You can only blame yourself. The treatment is there. Yes, we have the highest HIV infection, which is now, I think, your 7 point whatever is now 8.3 million. But we have the biggest antiretroviral program in the world.
Yeah. That made me so proud. I must
Exactly.
admit, when I read that, I was.
That makes me so proud.
But we don't talk about that.
No, we don't, because we don't talk about HIV because of the stigma of HIV.
I get. Yeah.
And we need to break down those barriers. We need to say to people, accept me as I am, whether I'm black, whether I'm white, whether I'm mixed, whether I'm straight, whether I'm gay, whether I'm trans, accept me as I am. Negative, positive, accept me.
Doesn't matter.
No.
Yeah. Craig, I would love to continue this discussion, but 40 minutes later, we've barely scratched the surface. So
No,
we're going to have to.
I need to say that when I do these kind of talks, I always find it wonderfully affirming, because the 40 minutes has gone past quicker than anything.
Yeah.
And that to me is always a very good sign.
Yes.
So I've enjoyed it hugely. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us and for just highlighting that a lot of the time the prejudices that we might have are totally unfounded. And you've just proven this, that actually to be able to go and for me, all I'm seeing is that if I have a sneaky suspicion that I might be HIV positive, I can go to a healthcare facility. I can have myself tested.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get the information back that says I'm positive, it's a me thing. It's not something that everybody, I don't get a tattoo on my head when I walk out there that
Thank
says
you.
that.
And you know, that's a very good point, because you need, as an HIV positive person, to realize that being positive doesn't define you. It's just one of the things that is part of your journey. It's not your only journey.
Yes.
And my big thing, and the thing that drives me to work for Right to Care, is that one day I want someone to say, that one, he made a difference. That's all I want.
And that's a fabulous way to end the show. Craig, thank you ever so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on SAITA StraightTalk. Remember, you do not have to wonder. You can go to your closest healthcare facility and get tested. We do have the biggest healthcare system that can support you through your HIV journey. So take advantage of that. Thank you for joining us on SAITA StraightTalk. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.